Organizational Behavior, Human Behavior at Work, Chapter 1. LOs, the meaning of organizational behavior, the key goals and forces with which it is concerned, the basic concepts of organizational behavior, the major approaches taken in this book, how organizational behavior affects organizational performance, the limitations of organizational behavior. So when we look at organizational behavior, we have a systematic study and application of knowledge about how people act within organizations. Identifies ways in which people can act more effectively. Is a scientific discipline and applied science, provides a useful set of analysis tools. So it's not organizational behavior. We don't look at something and say, well, what should say? What it does do is look at, if you have people working for you, it's going to look at, see, why do they behave the way they do? What things affect their behavior? And this is not subjective totally. There's science involved in this, and there's research involved in this. And it goes back many, many years. It is very useful. So you're helping people try to figure out, particularly when you have problems within an organization, how to maybe resolve them. So when we look at the benefits of organizational behavior. So it helps observe the behavior of individuals within the organization, aids in understanding the complexities involved in the interpersonal relationships, examines the dynamics of relationships within small groups, aids in viewing and managing organizations as whole systems. So when you think in terms of organizational behavior, let's break it down to the smallest element. That will be the individual. How do they behave? Then you look at the groups, how do they behave? And then you can even look at your organizations when you look at whole systems and all these complexities that are involved in these interpersonal things that happen. A lot of times I'm working with people, clients in my coaching practice. A lot of times people ask me, what do you see as the most common problems out here in corporate America? And I say, it's people related stuff. Not the technology, not the research, not the equipment. A lot of times it's the people related stuff. And how do you address people related stuff? Through organizational behavior theories and analysis and tools that have been proven to be working over a period of time. Goals of organizational behavior: to systematically describe how people behave under various circumstances. Now, this is where you get into, you think in terms of this. It's like, if you take 5 people and you put them in a work environment and they behave a certain way, and then you put 5 other people in there and they behave a different way. Question is why were there differences? You see how people behave different under certain circumstances, but you can also see differences between 2 groups doing the same thing. To understand people's behavior, you want to understand, the individual. Why do they do some of the things they do? What caused them to do certain things, or what precipitated that? I'll give you an example. What if a group was working fine, and all of a sudden they're not working fine? Okay, there's a reason for that. Organizational behavior is how you attempt to address that, identify and address it, to predict the individual's behavior. So you have the individual, understanding people, the group's behavior of people, the individuals predict how people may behave. For instance, if you know for a fact, if we take people at a certain age and we put them in a certain environment, we can expect a certain type of outcome. To control human behavior at work. The goal is to be able to understand how can you get positive things from people. To kind of control, yeah, I think that's a little strong word, but it's actually I want to say, manage the behavior of people at work would be a better word than control. Forces of organizational behavior. So let's look at people. Constitute the internal social system of the organization. So no good organization can survive bad people. So when you look at your people, you got to look at that. And the people will establish a social system within the organization. And that's an informal thing. That's never formal, it's never written, but it will happen. Now, that can be good, or it can be bad, or it can just be neutral. Diversity. And this word right here, I hate the fact that it's been politicized so much because it defies common sense. Look at what it says right here. Diversity occurs when employees bring a wide array of educational backgrounds, talents, and perspectives to the job. That doesn't say anything about race or gender. You see, when you vilify a word, and you can't use it, this is how it skews people. You can right now in corporate America, it's hard to even go out here and talk about diversity without people going to something political. And see, this is not political. This is how you build strong teams. When you bring in people who have different ways of thinking, different educational background, different talents to help make a group team strong or organization strong. Structure, formal relationship, and use of people in organizations. So this is where you have formal relationships by virtue of how an organization is set up. For instance, you have an employee, you have a supervisor, you have a manager, you might have a district manager, and you may have a vice president. So this is how these people, so within that, with these employees, you have different employees doing different things. And the reason they're doing different things is because of the structure. So people must be related in some structural way so their work can be effectively coordinated. So a lot of times you'll see situations where if one person has a job and they don't get it done right or timely, it affects two other jobs because of how the coordination and structure works, the coordination effort. In order for me to do my job, I need Mary to do hers first. And then I follow up Mary's job and Steve follows me up. Technology provides the tools necessary for employees to carry out their tasks. This is one of the reasons why you always want to have stay on the cutting edge of technology. It can allow you to work smarter. For instance, now that you have this thing called AI, how could you use that in the course of your job to help you be smarter, save less time, maybe get more things done? So you have to you have to keep up with the technology. And this is why you have IT people who constantly are training. Environment. Organizations operate in internal and external environments. So you have internal and external environments as an organization. Internal is obviously what's in the organization. External is outside of it. And all of these things can internal stuff and external stuff can affect what you actually do. Changes create demands on organizations. Changes create demands on organizations because now people are actually having to do some things they haven't done before, or they're dropping some things that they used to do. And usually when they drop things that they used to do, it's because they're going to usually pick up something else. As the organization evolves or technology evolves or whatever, maybe people figure out ways to work smarter. External environment affects human behavior. So this is how, when you look at external, it influences people's attitudes. For instance, for prime example, if somebody is actually grew up and they have or they're part of an organization or group that maybe, let's just say that they cater to a special group of people, and let's just say in this particular case is men, and it's men over age 40. Well, there's a certain type of attitude that men over age 40 will have. It won't be the same as men who are under 25. So these attitudes a lot of times are influenced by things outside of organizations, social organizations, how you watch and get your news, your culture, your community, your family. Affects working conditions. It provides a competition for resources and power. So when you're out there looking for external forces, external environment, this is one of the things, like if you're an organization and you're trying to buy or acquire something, so are other organizations. So you will have a competition amongst your competitors who do similar things that you do, also soliciting services and needs and stuff from external organizations. Positive characteristics. So we have theories, and this is where you get into stuff where this is where the research has been done. A lot of times associated with science and the theories. How do they, it's the explanation of how and why people think and feel and act, as they do. So practical, identify important variables that link them to form propositions that are tested through research. And here comes the research. It's gathering and interpreting relevant evidence that will support a behavioral theory or help change it. Ongoing process undercover behavioral knowledge. So undercover process to uncover behavioral knowledge. So realistic, when you look at the research, I'll give you an example. If someone says, well, I don't like hiring people in their 20s because they're lazy. Now, is that a theory based on research, or is that your opinion? you could probably look at the research and look at it and say, that's not valid. That's just someone's opinion that they don't like hiring people. Because bottom line, there's lazy people in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s. Okay, the interaction of theory, research, and practice in organization. So when we look at this, this is how these the interaction of theory, research, and practice, how they become part of organization behavior and how they're used. You have some theories that have been based upon research, and you have practice that has been going feeding into the theories and into the research. So you can see how they're connecting. It's not one way, they go both ways. And this is when someone can look at this and use this model or someone else's model to determine kind of what's going on in the organization and not their opinion. Or I should say simply, not just their opinion. Fundamental concepts of organizational behavior. So when we look at the nature of people, individual differences, everybody is different. Everybody is different. And that's just not on their race and sex. It's their culture, their religion, their family, their community, their education, their life experiences. That actually, and what that does is affect all these things I just mentioned, affects their perception of life. What's good, what's bad, or what can be done, or what cannot be done. A whole person. And when we look at a whole person, it means a totality. It means if I have an employee, it means this guy, not just him at work, him at home, him in his community, his education, his experiences. I have to look at the whole person because that's actually who works for me. It's not just the engineer. He's a husband, he's a father, he's involved in organizations, he does extracurricular activities. That's the whole person. Motivated behavior is when you have motivated behavior. This is when you have people they have a tendency to want to excel. For some reason, something has motivated this person or this individual or this group of people. And you can see it. And it's very easy to spot because when you see a motivated individual or a motivated group and you see another person who's not and another group who's not, it's going to be very easy to ascertain which one is motivated. Now, organizational theory, what makes them motivated? Organizational behavior, I'm sorry. What makes them be motivated? Desire for involvement. People do have a desire for involvement. One of the things as leaders, get them involved in things. Get them involved in things as much as you can. And you look for that desire to get involved. Encourage that. And when you don't see it, try to encourage people to go that route. But nurture that desire for involvement. Ultimately, that's going to be your people who are going to be more proactive than reactive. Value of the person. Do you value people? The value of the person. There are some leaders out here that do not. There are some organizations that do not value people. But I can tell you in my experiences in both of my careers and what I currently do in retirement, people know when they're not valued. And one of the things is, when they don't feel valued, this is what they think. I've heard people say this. Why should I be loyal to this organization and they're not loyal to me? The nature of organizations, the social systems that you have. What type of social systems do you have within this? Like now you'll see organizations now, big organizations now, they would take things where they will have give the employees days off with pay to go do things within a community and get involved and be connected to the community. And that's about the social systems right there. Mutual interest. What's your mutual interest? Find people who have mutual interest, and I'll show you some folks who could probably excel. Because one of the reasons you'll find is they're all pulling in the same direction. Everybody has a mutual interest. Now, they may agree about how to go about doing it, and that's fine. Because that means now you have diversity of thought, and you're going to figure out the best way to do it. But their interests are the same. Ethics. Ethics is something, if that's lacking, now you're talking about some serious issues within the organization because now you're talking about people who are doing things that they shouldn't do. Not only can that lead to having suspensions, termination, but it can also lead to litigation. Nature of organizations, social systems. Activities in organizations are governed by social laws as well as psychological laws. So, for instance, social laws. How many people, if you knew you had a coworker that actually doesn't have a girlfriend, but actually has an animal as a girlfriend, his dog is like he treats it like his girlfriend. How many people will be comfortable with that? Working with someone like that. That's a social. That's not a legal thing. It's just a social thing. And the reason I bring it up, that actually came up before. It was suspected that the guy was doing some unnatural acts with his dog. And did he violate a law? Did he break a crime? But did he violate a social law? And that's what he violated, was a social law, which ultimately led to consequences for him. Psychological laws and stuff. That's dealing with things along the lines when you talk about, the mind and the study. Psychology is study of the mind, but you have psychological laws and stuff that too, that it's just almost a given that you've learned throughout your life. And those things play in the system too. So that's when you have the psychological laws where some people are be more in tune with others and similar you've heard this before, being like-minded. That's what we're talking about. Mutual interest. Organizations and its employees depending on each other to achieve their respective goals. This is what we refer to as interdependency, where, again, example I gave earlier, where if Mary doesn't do her job, I can't do mine. And if I don't do mine, Mike can't do his. So we depend on each other. And this is where you really have to work together as a team. And it has to be about we and not me. And when you don't have that, that can create some problems for mutual interest, because at that point, you no longer have mutual interest. You have self-interest. Ethics. Use of moral principles and values affect the behavior of the individual. So what we do is, in most organizations, they will have a code of ethics. Ethics that are organizational ethics that people must abide by. And the reason you must have that is because if you don't, everybody's definition of right and wrong is different. Now it's subjective versus you actually putting a bar out there and say, okay, these are the things that everybody's organization must do. These are the things as organization people must not do. Mutual interest provides a subordinate goal for employees, the organization, and society. So when you look at these mutual interests, the goals for the organization, society, I want you to look at how things are look at how things relate. Okay, employee goals, they go down to the superordinate goal of mutual interest. The organizational goals, they meet, they come together. They can't be in contradiction. They just simply cannot be. If they are, goals don't get accomplished. And then you see where it goes into mutual accomplishment of goals, because you have an agreement and understanding. Ethics comes into play in there. How do they go about doing their job? I mean, you can have somebody who's doing their job, but they can be doing things that's unethical in the process of doing it. And that's an issue. So you look at the mutual accomplishment of goals, how it points directly to the organization. And then you look at the employee, and then you look at society. You can't separate the three, because employees are part of the society in which we live in, and they're also part of the organization. So you see how these things have a nexus with each other. Human resources approach. Growth and development of people towards higher levels of competency, creativity, fulfillment. People are the central resource in any organization. Called supportive approach, because the manager's primary role changes from control of employees to active support of their growth and performance. So when you look at the human resources approach, this is about helping people to, I like to use one word, it helps people evolve. And when they evolve, a lot of times that involves competency, creativity, and fulfillment. And, and the most important thing in an organization, in any organization, is its people. So when you look at supportive, earlier when we were talking about controlling employees, when I told you I didn't like that word controlling, supportive approach, because the manager's primary role is to changes from control to active support. And now I'm in a situation where I support my people. I value them. I support them, and people can feel that and they know that. You can look, you can be stern and you can be strict, but are you supportive? Do you build your people up or do you tear them down? Contingency approach. Different situations require different behavioral practices for greater effectiveness. Required as managers need to know under what conditions they should choose one behavior approach over another. Encourages analysis of each situation prior to action and discourages habitual practice based on universal assumptions about people. So, situational leadership, contingency approach. That means this: you're fluid. You lead people the way they need to be led in certain situations. It determines what you do. Managers cannot be stern and firm and stoic and operate in one management style because it will not work. Results-oriented approach. So self-explanatory. Bottom line, this is measure output. This is measure results, measured in terms of economic outputs, inputs and outputs. Productivity. How many widgets did you make today? Our goal each day is for you to make 100 widgets. Did you make 100 widgets? Or did you make more? Or did you make less? So we see equations showing the role of organizational behavior in work systems. So we see some of the things that come up here: knowledge, skill, attitude, situation, ability, motivation, potential performance, resources, opportunity. And you see over here what they equal: ability, motivation, potential human performance, organizational results. The systems approach. Many variables operate within a system. Parts of a system are interdependent, and larger systems contain many subsystems. So when you look at the parts, and when I say independent, again, if Mary does her job, I do my job, Mike can do his job. Now, what you may find is if Mary's unit does their job, then my unit can do its job, and then Mike's unit can do its job. When you're talking about the systems in there. And when you get into larger organizations, that's going to consist of many systems. Smaller the organization, the less systems you have. Systems requires inputs, engage in dynamic process, and produce outputs. Mechanism is cyclical and self-sustaining. So when we say that cyclical and self-sustaining, it's like peaks and valleys. Things go up and they go down. They go up and down, up and down. That's the cycle in which they go in. But they're self-sustaining in these systems. Everything, it can operate, on its own, stand on its own, autonomous like. Systems produce both positive and negative results, intended and unintended consequences. So when you have systems, here's what's going to happen. Life, real world things are going to happen. Things you can't control, but that will create positive and negative results. For instance, a group is functioning at a high level, a very high level, and then one person in the group takes a promotion and 2 people retire. So you had 10 people in the group, now you're down to 7. And then you bring 3 other people in there, replace them, and now all of a sudden the group is no longer as positive as it used to be. Now you're seeing some negative stuff. Why? Because you added 3 people to that group that's not meshing with that group for some reason. And there's a problem. Subsequent, there's your negative result. Now you got to figure out, how do I address this? Intended and unintended consequences. You could put a group that say, let's reverse what I just gave you. A group that has 10 people in it, 3 leave for various reasons, and they're underperforming. And you bring 3 people in, and now they're really performing well. That was my intended consequence to try to get that to happen. Versus the other example I gave you, that was unintended consequence. When I added these 3 people, I didn't intend for things to get worse. So that's real world stuff there. So cost-benefit analysis of organizational behavior options. So when you look at this, you look at proposed OB actions, potential costs, potential benefits. So when you're talking about doing certain things, it involves money, expenses. So when you propose to do something, you got to look at this. How much is it going to cost us to do? What is the benefit? Is the cost worth the benefit? And if not, then that means you may not necessarily still not do something, but you may have to tweak it so that it actually, the change in the expense, the cost actually is the benefit, is worth the benefit. And then you compare and then you decide, and this is how you just make that decision. What is it we actually want to do? I mean, something may sound good on paper and even in theory, but in reality may be an issue. And I'll give you an example. Something that you propose to do, and let's say that there was some software you propose to use to do this and upgrade stuff, but that cost to actually implement that software, it will cost your company worldwide. It will cost your company $10 million. Now you have to sit down and decide: is that a $10 million worth spending for that, or is that something that you need to pass on and try to find something more cost effective? Limitations of organizational behavior. So behavioral bias, satisfied employees' experiences while overlooking the broader system of the organization in relation to all its publics. So you have bias. When you have people involved in stuff, and we're all people, we have a tendency to be biased. And we can look at something and say it's good because, you know, that's our bias is driving it, or say something is bad because it's driving. Law of diminishing returns. Increases of a desirable practice produce a declining zero and the negative returns as more increases are added. Every situation has an optimum amount of desirable practice. So there is a breaking point. At some point in time when you say the law, you know, we're getting to the point where now we're seeing positive returns, but you can't go to the point where it's actually say, okay, now we went too far, and now we're getting to the point where we're having diminishing returns. Things are beginning to decline. Things are beginning to, you know, you ever heard this? Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, and you have to. It's balance. If you get outside of that, you can actually see something that was actually working and you thought was really good be bad. And I'll give you an example. It's a company that actually is making some projects and they're selling like crazy, and the economy is good, and so they decide, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead, since we're making so much money, the economy is doing so good, and our product is in such high demand. Let's go ahead and hire an extra shift of people, and let's double our productivity. 6 months later, the economy crashes. And before that, you know, they start seeing it gradually. Now they got diminishing returns. Limitations of organizational behavior. So organizational effectiveness is achieved by combining all system variables together in balanced way. That word I used a while ago, balance. Manipulation of people, using people to further one's own need. This is where I'm using people. If I was a manager and I'm using my employees, I'm not using them for the greater good of the organization. I'm using them for whatever my agenda may be, and get them to do what I think is give you examples, maybe something to make me look good, but it's not really good for the organization or my team. Ethical leadership, maintaining high ethical and moral integrity through social responsibility, open communications, cost benefit analysis. So when you are actually in leadership, one of the things I always tell leaders, and when I was a leader, I had to always remember, people take their lead from me. People take their lead from the leaders. And if the leader is not socially responsible, then don't expect your people to be. And, you know, if they're not open in communication, and, you know, that creates problems. That gives you that. We don't have open communication. You know, John may be mad at Sally. Well, through open communication about something that Sally did. Open communication would mean that he would go and talk to her about that to try to work that out. And if you don't have that, what he will do is he will not talk to her. He'll just walk around mad and tell everybody else how he's mad at Mary, and she doesn't even know it because they don't have open communication, and that's a form of dysfunction. Cost benefit analysis, what I was referring to earlier, is something that you're planning to do. What's the cost? Is the benefit worth the cost? You have to be able to conduct an analysis or have somebody conduct analysis, and before you to make that move. Something that sounds good on theory and look good on paper might not be cost beneficial because there are some things that you didn't know once you start conducting your research. Sustainability. The capacity of a system to endure across time by balancing the triple bottom line. Triple bottom line demands based on planet, people, and profit. So here is sustainability. Are you operating in a manner, is your group set up for sustainability? Can they sustain through the good times, the bad times, the crisis situations? And here's the bottom line, the triple bottom line. Demands based on the planet, profit, and people. And I'll give you an example. Demands based on the planet, profit, people. Here's one based on the planet that happened not too long ago. COVID-19. It affected the planet, the whole world. How did it affect businesses? You see, there are some businesses that went under, that didn't survive COVID-19. And then there's plenty of others that got hurt or was hurt and diminished by it. That's the planet. The people, when you look at the situations where you may have a situation where you may have a plant that requires you to have a certain educational level, proficiency level to do a certain task or whatever else. And then you find out in that area, you don't have that. Now you have a problem with the people, your candidates for work, employment. So now you got to look at, okay, now I got to incur more expenses because I may have to start hiring people from other cities or other states and to relocate, give them packages to come here, try to entice them to come here. Profit, obviously we know about the profit. Are you profitable? Is what you're doing making a profit? And if it's not, will it make a profit eventually? Continuing challenges of organizational behavior. Seeking quick fixes. Quick fix, addressing the symptom while neglecting the underlying problem. We are notorious for this. And I'll give you an example, just your body. You have a gash, a serious open wound, big open wound on your arm. So what you decide to do is say, give me 10 Band-Aids, let me put on top of this and let me go. That's a quick fix. Versus you going to the hospital and actually get stitches put in it and getting it sewn up. That's what people do sometimes in corporate America when they look at it, they want to get a quick fix. Well, this is enough to get us by. Oftentimes that can lead to buyer's remorse down the road. Varied environments, shrinking demand. Remember I told you a while ago, shrinking demand. The example I gave, a company that went and built up all this, hired a whole nother shift, started doubling the productivity, but the demand for the product 6 months down the road was shrinking. Scarce resources. What is, you make something and you're selling it and you do really well. However, one of the elements that you need to make it is scarce and you can't get it. And I'll give you an example. What if you're actually needing something that comes from China? Something that just happened right now. We have tariff wars going on. So now that piece that you used to get from China to put in your product that you used to get for $5 now is $40. Look what that's going to do to you. It's going to be scarce. It's by virtue of price prohibitive. More intense competition. Other people will get into business that you're in. And when they do, they're gonna come usually try to step their game up, which means you'll have to step your game up. Organizational stagnation or decline. Organization that has been doing the same thing for 20 years and has not changed. Well, guess what? At some point that's going to decline because evolution and technology and the world evolves. This organization did. And I'll give you all a prime example. For some of you may be too young to remember a company called Blockbuster. This is before online streaming became out. And you had a company called Blockbuster that used to go there and rent DVDs and videos to take home in the house and watch them. When Netflix came out and online streaming came out, that was a business that actually declined quickly and went bankrupt. Increased stress and conflict. You're going to have, in certain situations, increased stress and conflict. You can't overlook these things. If you do, at some point in time, it's going to very seriously affect individuals and the business. And it's not something that you can say, you know what, if I stick my head in the sand like an ostrich, this will go away. No, increased stress and conflict. One of the questions I will always ask people when they talk about increased stress and operations with people and with their organization is your current stress level, is it sustainable? And if the answer is no, my response is, then that means you have to make some changes. Definitional confusion. Difficulty emerging as a clearly defined field. Lack of sense regarding unit of analysis, needs, focus, contributions to date. So she's difficulty emerging as a clear defined field. So when you see these things, it can pop up in many different ways. Here are a couple examples. Unit of analysis, lack of consensus regarding this unit of analysis. How do you measure your units for analysis? How are you analyzing that stuff? What are your needs? Do you agree on what the needs are? If we got 10 people, 5 people say we need to do this, another group says we need that, Okay, that's an issue. Focus. Are we focused on the same thing? Some people may be focused on the process. Some other people may be focused on the end result. You need to try to get people's focus to be the same. And that's the difference a lot of times between people who are process driven and people who are results driven. Contributions to date. What type of contributions to date are you seeing from your efforts? Does it appear to be promising? Or is it something that you're like, you know what? We've been doing this for a year and I can't really tell you what the contributions to date are. Then that may mean you're on the wrong path or you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. That concludes this chapter.